tried to figure out what is the best explanation. There have been at least 10, fairly credible explanations put out there. And so I use what's called a multi-criteria decision analysis tool to enter all those different alternative explanations. And then there's a variety of criteria to evaluate which is the best explanation and the most obvious. And we've got this exhibit that you can show that I'm looking at, and hopefully the audience can see as well. But the most reasonable explanation is what's the most reasonable explanation. I've all heard of Occam's razor. Is the simplest explanation of something that you don't understand is probably the correct one. Not always, but probably true. And then we looked at issues like, is it feasible to do this? What is the evidence that's available? And there's not much of it, point to. And then for this, what is all this mysterious drone activity about? I also looked at criteria about what's the credibility of denials. Is the government evaluation trustworthy? If it's a hoax, is this a hoax that you could really carry off or not? And then the last criteria that I use is what is the fit of the explanation with both the drone reconnaissance, I'll call it reconnaissance, drone reconnaissance of military bases, and then the activity in New Jersey, most of which was not at military bases. So those are the criteria I used, a total of 7 criteria, and then I looked at 10 different options. Starting with the first one, is this enemy reconnaissance? And that is a very sensible explanation for the military targets, less so for the New Jersey stuff. There is some evidence. There's been sightings of it. The head of Army Combat Command, the Air Force air component, ground conventional forces component, that called out that 4-star general to the Norfolk area, Langley Air Force Base, because there's so much of this is about a year ago. And it's continued in many other bases. Clearly, drones are flying over military bases doing reconnaissance. That is fairly clear. Doesn't explain as much for what's going on in New Jersey, and our government keeps denying that, saying, no, this is not nefarious or dangerous stuff. So the government seems to be denying it. Do we believe them? In general, most people aren't believing the government explanations on this. And it's fundamentally, the government explanations are just fundamentally, as many people have pointed out, it's fundamentally inconsistent. They keep telling us it's not a threat, but we don't know what it is. Well, if you don't know what it is, you can't be sure it's not a threat. The second explanation was commercial testing, that there's commercial activity going on testing, and it makes sense you would do this at night and be secretive about it. And for example, there's over 200 companies that we know of that are trying to develop, I'll call them air taxis or some other terms for it. There's a lot of companies doing this, and this makes a lot of sense for why in the world is stuff going on in New Jersey. Well, if you're going to have an air taxi company, what's your lead market? Probably New York City and northern New Jersey. So that really fits very well. Doesn't explain what's going on over Langley Air Force Base or other military bases, but that explanation fits very well in commercial testing. And I won't go through the details on the others, but some other explanations were, it's commercial reconnaissance. It could be that there's companies out there willing to sell information to foreign enemies. So maybe it's not China or Russia or Iran flying drones, but a private company is, one they may be affiliated with, and I'll get back to that later, but it's commercial reconnaissance going on, done by commercial companies. Fourth explanation is, Nassim Taleb is probably the smartest person alive in the U.S. today. He wrote The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable. And he used the term fooled by randomness, that we are all the time. So it could be, the explanation the government wants to believe is, hey, you're just seeing normal drones, you're seeing aircraft, you're making mistakes, and you're being fooled. And then the next one I had was kind of a variant on that, and this is a term I use. I have rumant reinforced randomness. Again, I was an intelligence officer, and we have signals intelligence, SIGINT, human intelligence, human, open source intelligence, OSINT. And so we would make up the phrase rumant. Hey, we heard this rumor. What's the source? Oh, it's just rumor. It's rumant, rumor intelligence. Well, when you got people talking about, hey, there's a lot of drone activity out, what's going to happen to drone activity reporting? It's going to go through the roof because people hear about it, so you see a lot more. So it is feasible, and again, this is what the government is kind of hinting at, is it's feasible that all this drone activity that's being reported in New Jersey has kind of always been at about that level. It's just that a lot more people are looking right now, and that's true. So that's another explanation. The sixth explanation offered is that these are government secret tests. And initially that made a lot of sense. I don't think that makes a lot of sense now because the government is going through such efforts, briefing congressmen and local and state officials saying, this is not us. I mean, they said that over and over and over again. So it would be at this point, if that is true, if they are lying, that's really, really dumb. They're going to get in a lot of trouble for that. And the other thing is, again, you got to consider criteria like, could you keep something like this secret? There'd be a lot of people involved in that. A lot of people in the military would be uncomfortable about openly lying to congressmen about stuff. I think something at this point would have already leaked. If this had been the government doing it, it probably would have already leaked. So I don't buy that explanation. As you'll see in the scorecard, it does not rate very high. So I'm rating on a 1 to 10 scale. I won't get into the details unless someone wants to get into it, but 5 is about average, 10 is really, really reliable, 0 is, you're not scoring well at all is a credible explanation. Government secrets are scoring at less than 4, not very good. There was a big theory coming out that it was the government NBC detectors. There was some rationale for it initially, but people have looked into that, and that just does not hold any water. Again, the government has denied it, but and there just apparently don't seem to be a lot of sniffer drones that would be out there, and a sniffer drone is not going to be the size of a small pole, so it just doesn't explain a lot of stuff. NBC detectors, that rate's really low. I rate it as a 3 overall across the 7 different criteria. The next one is aliens. There's some people saying that. And again, aliens not for everything. Aliens meaning, especially when you see something that just takes off out of sight, beyond our technology. They keep getting reports on that, and I'm not going to get into a whole discussion of is that credible or not. But the other thing to add to that does add some credibility to it is it's not so much the drones we were saying wouldn't be aliens. What they could be, though, a lot of people are explaining this, saying a lot of these drones we're launching drones that are triggered by an unidentified, these to be UFOs now, unidentified aerial phenomena. One goes out and now all these drones are out, trying to measure it. And so you're seeing drones that are out there looking because there was just, some possibility of some alien or unidentified thing flying around, and those drones have deployed for that reason. And then the next theory, which I've run across, which is a little harder to believe, is that there's a guy who believes that the government is actually deliberately increasing drone activity, and they're readying us for an announcement that there are aliens, and they've been around there since 1947. That's his theory. And there's some rationale to it. I mean, I'm not going to get into do I believe in this or not. I know some really credible people who are absolutely convinced and have evidence that, yes, they did come to Roswell in 1947, and it makes sense. What would bring you to Roswell in 1947? Well, what happened in 1945? We detonated a nuclear weapon in New Mexico. That could have been detected. Takes a while for the aliens to get there. That's where they're going to investigate. Hey, it looks like technology is advancing on this planet. And the reason I know people who I respect who say that they've been involved or their father was involved in exploiting the technology that we discovered from the wreckage there. And so the government, this is the hard part for me to believe. Believing aliens, I can accept that. What I have a hard time accepting is that for over half the century, the government has been able to keep that secret. And there are people, testified before Congress recently, and a lot of credible sources saying we do have a program, but as yet, not much evidence that you can really bank on. And then for me, the really difficult thing is how do I believe that the government was able to keep this secret for so long? And not just our government, but the Russian government that supposedly had dogfights with them and all that. It's just, I don't have that much faith in the government's ability to convincingly lie for long periods of time and keep it secret. But that's the other theory, number 9, is that the government is readying us, so they are deliberately sending out more drones and getting people ready for the announcement that, we got to level with you. There are aliens, we've recovered their stuff, they exist. 10th explanation, those were the main explanations that I found and then I rated. And of those, the one that rated the highest was roommate reinforced randomness. That they're just, we're getting so many reports now, and a lot of them are just, false reports or information. That's the government's response, basically, is that, you're over panicking, you're seeing aircraft, yeah, there's some drones, but it's largely commercial testing, blah, blah, blah. On the last two that I rated, the ones that scored the highest, is I'm combining things, The explanation that it is enemy reconnaissance and it's also commercial testing scores fairly high, almost an 8. It's a good explanation, and that is the theory I believe in. I believe that, and to be more specific, I believe that what's been going on for the past several years and is still going on today is that Chinese agents, there's thousands of them in the U.S., no doubt about that evidence. A U.S. sheriff even reported late last year, he came back from an FBI briefing and he put out a video, probably wasn't supposed to, and he just said the FBI just briefed him that the Chinese has safe houses in every single state in the United States. We know there are thousands of Chinese agents in the U.S. We've had tons of espionage cases where we've tracked Chinese down and prosecuted them. And by the way, a lot of these cases relate to things like aerospace technology and drones and spying on naval bases, et cetera. So that fits as well in this. But
Dr. Miller, I'm sorry, just to interrupt you real quick, when you say Chinese agent safe houses, can you elaborate on that? What does that mean?
yeah, so safe house is just a place where if an agent gets in trouble, there's a place they can go and they'll be recovered, or in China's case, maybe killed, but a place where they think they'll go and be safe, and then taken back to China or snuck out somewhere else, somewhere protected. But the most important thing I want to add to this is I think these are Chinese agents operating via a front company, and a drone front company, probably a taxi company. So there's over 200 companies we know of that are working in this space. China has some of the best already and biggest urban air mobility, UAM, urban air mobility, or air taxi companies. China's got one. And if you're going to operate that, again, where are you going to be operating it? New York City, New Jersey. So that makes sense for that. And it certainly makes sense for operations over military bases. Chinese agents using a front company, an air taxi company, so they got great cover. And, in the military, we like to do concealment. I can even tell you the Russian words for it, Maskirovka, disinformatia, and hiding in plain sight is the best thing you can do. Because if you got some secret base, it could be found. If I've got an air taxi company and the U.S. comes knocking on my door, what are these drones doing? Well, they're practicing. They're going out at night because, we're a commercial company. We've got secrets. We're flying at night, and we're testing flying in the New Jersey corridor. And so you've got really, really good cover to do this.